I was conceived from the sperm of an anonymous man. I found out he sired maybe 600 babies. Now some of my siblings are starting to show up, and they all want the truth of their origin.
I always actually felt as there was a physical bit of me missing.
And donor-conceived people are all too often told, you should be happy to be alive. But I also have an innate desire to know where I come from and who I come from.
An anonymous donor can produce 1,000 children. So what was wrong with your child's donor?
Schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder.
And donor-conceived kids have grown up together without knowing they're related.
I came in close contact with 2 of my siblings and didn't know. Good thing most of them are gay.
I want the government to end the anonymity of sperm donors.
No, of course it bloody well shouldn't continue.
To be human is to have a story, and to have a story, one must have the true story.
It began a long time ago, in Philadelphia in 1884. A wealthy couple couldn't get pregnant, so the husband went to see a professor of medicine. Turned out the husband was infertile due to gonorrhea. So the professor got him to send in his wife. He chloroformed her. Then, without her consent, he got his best-looking student to go and masturbate. And he injected the sperm into her in front of the class. She got pregnant. Sometime later, the professor did confess to her husband what he'd done. But the woman was never told. And neither was the son who resulted. This set the tone. Secrets, lies, and anonymity. Now there are millions of people we call donor-conceived. I'm one of them. Okay, my story so far. My parents really wanted children, but my dad wasn't able to. So they went to see a doctor, and she inseminated my mother using sperm from an anonymous man. To produce me and my sister. Well, this was England in the 1950s, and it had to be a total secret. But after our dad died, our mother told me and my sister that secret. I was curious who the guy was, but they destroyed all the records. So I could never know. Until you could get basic DNA testing from your blood. I met a man, David, whose parents went to the same doctor. And DNA revealed that David was my brother. He came from the same anonymous biodad. It was great to have a brother, but now I really wanted to know who our biodad was. A lot of him is in me.
We loved our fathers, both of us. So why does this genetic connection matter so much?
I haven't the faintest idea, but it does.
I did a lot of detective work. And with DNA, we figured out the guy's identity. He was a brilliant scientist called Berthold Wiesner, the husband of the doctor who did the deed, and our biological father. But David, whose parents' marriage was troubled, now remembers finding out as a painful moment.
I felt so angry. I felt so much that so many of the things I had found, and still do find really frustrating in my own life, would not have been frustrating had I known that.
We found out that Wiesner sired maybe 600 children during his life, or even more. We may be the world's biggest family. We only knew of a few siblings. But then came something new. Inexpensive consumer DNA companies, like Ancestry.com, 23andMe. People suddenly wanted to know about their ethnic origin or their health risks. Well, they sent in their DNA. And when the results came in, some of them got a big surprise. Like they have a lot of half-siblings. So far, about 45 of my sibs have been identified. Here are a few of them.
So, what was it like to suddenly find out your dad wasn't your biological father?
It's like you're standing on the edge of the sea when you're paddling and the waves go out and it pulls the sand from under your feet. That's what it felt like to me, that there'd been a firm foundation and suddenly I'd got to reassess everything.
I felt, this makes sense, but also coupled with this immense sense of loss. Because it had only been a year since I'd lost my dad, and it felt like I'd lost him all over again.
And recently, some of this big family got together.
I don't like parties. I'm good. I'm not looking forward to this at all. And I walked in and I thought, I am home. I've never felt quite so relaxed in a group of people before.
Hey. You came? Yeah, I came to see you.
The party gave me a chance to talk to some of my sibs about how they felt about finding out the truth.
I had a very loving family, but I didn't quite fit in. But suddenly I had a truth, an authenticity, which was liberating.
It was like a huge moment in my life. I danced around the flat. I was so happy.
Why?
There's always a part missing. I always actually felt as though there was a physical bit of me missing. And it felt quite definitely down this side of me. The heart area, I guess you'd say. It felt as though that wasn't there.
I would like to have known. I think my parents should have told me. I was enormously grateful that I was able to discover who my biological father was. And I can't really imagine what it would be like not to have been able to do that.
To family.
To family.
Whatever that means.
So now that DNA is revealing these secrets, I think it's time to take a look at this question of donor anonymity. Because a lot of people want to know their genetic family. It's part of who you are. And also, these secrets and lies, they can cause real harm.
Just this sort of idea that it can be done, with a few shakes of the wrist and that's it, nothing else. That doesn't seem, there should be a bit more to it than that, I believe, rather than this sort of fog of, who knows, could have been anyone, except it never is, it's always the doctor out the back. It seems to be.
I've come to Ottawa to find out about one of those doctors Brother Graham's talking about. Dr. Norman Barwin. This is Rebecca Dixon. Her parents sought assistance from Dr. Barwin to conceive.
I've heard he was called the baby god.
Yeah, people have called, I don't know who started that, but he was called the baby god at some point.
But they didn't know that they had donor sperm.
They weren't intending to use donor sperm. They were having issues, but they went to see Dr. Barwin, and to their understanding, he used my dad's sperm. I had always looked different from my parents, and I was aware of that, and other people had commented on it.
When scandals with Barwin started to come out, Rebecca heard of a young woman called Kat Palmer, whose parents were patients. Barwin turned out to be her biological father. So Rebecca did a DNA test against Kat.
And it confirmed already that we were half-sisters.
So Barwin was Rebecca's biodad too. But there are a lot more than them.
How many do you have?
I have 18 siblings so far.
You have 18 siblings, and these are all from Dr. Barwin?
Yeah.
The doctor who treated the parents used his own sperm?
Yeah. We found 19 of us where he used his own sperm without the parents' knowledge. He is my biological father, but I don't think of him in that way at all. He was always the doctor who had helped my parents have me. And now I found out that he did it in a horrible way.
Also, sometimes Barwin secretly used sperm he took from other patients without consent. All these lies have real dangers.
Kat and I are a similar age. There's about 6 months age difference. We found out that we went to the same high school for a couple of years. We thought about how easy it would have been for us to be friends, but it could have also very easily been that we started dating, or especially, it's a small circle.
Like my family, Rebecca and her new siblings have become close.
And it's easy to exaggerate the importance of genetics. I found myself dealing with the situation where with my dad, I say, it doesn't matter that we're not biologically connected. You're my dad, nothing changes that. This other person who is my biological father doesn't really mean anything to me. And yet I'm saying at the same time to my siblings, we had this genetic connection, let's love each other. Let's be part of each other's lives. And I think it's okay that those two things are true at the same time.
Barwin was not alone. Quite a few doctors have been revealed by DNA testing to have secretly used their own sperm. But most doctors don't do what Barwin did, of course. They use sperm banks, corporations that ship sperm around the world. Millions of offspring. Egg offspring, too, now. We don't know how many. There is no central registry. Nobody keeps track. Nobody really knows how many offspring from one donor. But you'd think when a so-called donor sells his sperm, the sperm bank makes sure he is in super good health. Not always. I've come to see Angie.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Barry.
Hi, Barry. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Welcome.
Angie.
Come on in.
Thank you very much.
Angie and her female partner used donor sperm to have a child. They picked a healthy donor. Or so they thought.
Well, what we found out is that he had several debilitating mental health issues. Depending on which doctor's diagnosis you were looking at, it was schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, also narcissistic personality disorder was written in there. And then he had a felony from a break and enter that he had done. And there were other arrests along the way.
Didn't they get a medical history from this guy, or did the guy just lie and they accepted the lie?
Yeah, they give them a questionnaire. They do call it a medical history questionnaire. And then they ask the donor to respond to a list of things. Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? And schizophrenia is one of the things that he was asked, but he just checked it off, no. We had notified them of our findings, and they just told us we had the wrong guy. And then they didn't notify anybody.
Was the donor still active?
Oh yeah, they called him out of retirement to donate to other families that were waiting for second or third children on a waiting list.
Oh.
When you look at Health Canada's regulations, then I can definitely see why I was duped by this industry. Because, you can't even mislabel the origin of a tomato, but you can mislabel everything about a human being that's going to be creating another human being, and that doesn't seem to matter here.
The thing is, the law doesn't allow Health Canada to collect health information from donors. Angie's kid is fine with only a small chance there'll be problems. But if a donor has 50 kids with a 10% chance of inheriting disease, that's still 5 sick kids. The sperm banks say they're doing more genetic testing now, but an anonymous donor can still get away with lying. Here are some of the health problems kids have inherited from donors. And some have died because they didn't have medical information. All this scares me about what my biodad Wiesner may have given his hundreds of offspring. He actually had Parkinson's almost all the time he was producing kids. My brother David and I meet up with my other brother David, who's been looking into the health risks in my DNA.
So let me see the birth.
And I'll show you elsewhere.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Parkinson's disease,
Late
late onset. Susceptibility to Parkinson's disease on another genetic test or another gene.
That is our Wiesnerian legacy.
That is definitely Wiesner, and because he had Parkinson's.
Yeah. You want me to go into the really dark stuff?
This wasn't the dark stuff?
Oh, no. Now, the great news here, and the gene set that this man gave us, other than that, is fantastic.
Just the Parkinson's, the schizophrenia, and the Crohn's disease.
Well, by the look of it, medicine's based on your personal genetics and epigenetics and environmental and viral triggers. You've got to know there should be no anonymity anymore medically. That's over.
I'm finding out that almost all my sibs think that the anonymity of donors is just wrong.
No, of course it bloody well shouldn't continue. Everybody has the right to know who their biological parent was, definitely.
I think for anybody's mental health, the right to your own story is very important.
For those of us who have been through this experience, I don't think any of us doubts for a moment that our common genetic background has meaning, has significance, not which we give to it, but which it gives to us.
Most donor-conceived people seem to want the option to know their donor's identity. And in the UK, David and others influenced the government to change the law and end anonymity. Since 2005, kids have the right to know their donor's identity when they reach 18. In Canada, in 2004, we persuaded the government to do the same.
When people find their fathers or they find their relatives, these are tremendously important stories, and I think they're important for a reason. I think it's a very basic yearning.
But then the government changed its mind. The doctors told them there'd be no more donors. And in the USA, well, anonymity has been standard in the sperm industry since the beginning.
The dipped one?
Dip, and I'll have a plain vanilla cup.
Since the start, everyone thought that the only way a guy would donate sperm is if he could be anonymous. Turned out, that wasn't true. Meet Tim Gullickson.
Why did you decide to be identifiable?
Curiosity, I suppose, to start with. But then at some point, some portion of the kids would be interested in meeting me, and I would be interested in meeting them. And so why not?
Well, my mom actually she tells me this a lot, she picked Tim because his voice recording sounded really like sweet, and that he said that he wanted to meet the kids. She was raising us as a single parent.
I mean, I never pretended to be like her parent because I wasn't doing that work, right? I didn't take her to school every day. I didn't tuck her in at night.
But you and your brother are not the only biological offspring that Tim has, right?
Mm-mm.
Correct.
How many do you have?
The ones that I've met are 17.
17?
17 total.
No.
Here's Joe, another one of Tim's kids.
Hey, how are you, honey?
Hello.
Every summer, Tim rents some cabins by a lake and spends a week with a bunch of his bio kids. And just like in my own family, Tim's offspring crossed paths before they knew they were related.
I came in close contact with two of my siblings and didn't know they were this guy that I worked with was on the same water polo team as Sawyer's boyfriend.
Oh my gosh.
So if I had hung out with him more, I probably would have met Sawyer and not known she was my sister. And Danny went to the college that I lived on the campus of. So I probably passed him. All his Instagram posts are 2 minutes from my house.
And he's your brother?
He's my brother. Good thing most of them are gay.
Yes. Good thing.
Tim wanted to be found by his offspring, but California Cryobank, his sperm bank, didn't want to help.
They set these rules and things I had to follow to try to get any information. And what was it? I had to...
Bottom line was they said they didn't know if they had my contact information, but they would try and they'd let you know.
Yeah, and call me back, then they didn't.
And they never gave you Tim's information?
No.
Even though he was supposed to be identifiable to you?
Yeah. And basically they told him that they could not reach me. And so I called them up and said, "You're lying. I've always kept you updated with my phone, my email, and my snail mail address." And they chastised me for wasting their time. So it was clear to me they weren't interested in making or facilitating that connection.
Even though all parties wanted it?
Correct.
Cute. Yep.
Wow, really?
More and more donors are willing to be identified to their offspring once they're adults. When the UK ended anonymity, the number of sperm donors went up. Other countries have also ended the secrecy. Some US banks no longer accept new anonymous donors at all. But California Cryobank, the biggest in the US, still has them. And they've agreed to talk to me. But at the last minute, they cancel. They say they don't want to be part of my personal journey. Anonymity means that a lot of babies can be produced from one man. My biodad Wiesner had maybe 600. But what if there's someone out there with an even bigger family? This is Steve Shelton. He's a bodybuilder, a psychiatrist, and he used to be an anonymous sperm donor.
When I was a freshman in medical school, actually, the medical school recruited me to be a sperm donor.
Yeah.
So I got started at that time.
I mean, did it help you financially in medical school?
You know, it actually did. Initially, they paid $20 a donation, but very quickly they raised that to $40.
And how many years did you do this?
I guess it was 17 years all total, depending on what my schedule was, but twice a week, 17 years.
But it's not impossible you could have 1,000 kids or more.
Yeah, as I think about the numbers in my head, I think that's possible.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess there's a sense of unreality to it. I just can't imagine that I've got all these kids out there. So I've never really focused on what the numbers might be.
I see.
Numbers would be whatever God determined they might be. You know, over the years, I've thought about that certainly there may be some children out there, and you know, in prayer, I would ask God's blessing upon them. But again, there's not having met anybody until recently, it just didn't really feel real, you know. So I met Derek about a year ago, actually.
Yeah.
How did you find each other?
I just got onto several DNA websites.
The first thing that hit me was, why is he contacting me? It was just kind of, what is this about?
Did you think it might be for money?
Well, you know, just everything floods through your head. So all that was going through my head.
How do you refer to him?
My biological father, my friend. He's become a really good friend. And a friend of my parents as well.
Was using a sperm donor a difficult decision for you guys?
It wasn't for me, but I'll let Jan speak for herself.
A little bit, somewhat. I want to say more of a pride thing. You know, it would be nice to have your own related child.
So it was a bit of a loss.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, Bob, you decided to tell your son the truth.
Well, Derek was having some medical issues that I'd never experienced or had run in Janet's family. And so that was probably the reason that we told Derek. So maybe he could do some research, and if he ever found out who his donor dad was, you know, that might help him, give him some more insights into his medical issues.
Well, may I ask what they were?
I was having some allergy problems that made it difficult to swallow food at some point. Interestingly enough, that was something that after I made the connection, you know, with Steve, that we kind of shared, and so you know, Steve's family has had that problem.
Over the Christmas holidays, I actually told Steve, I said, well, thank you for making it possible for us to have Derek. I said, I think he turned out pretty well, and I'm glad you were a part of the donor program there at Louisville.
All that effort that the medical community, went to keep everybody divided wasn't actually that necessary, perhaps.
Right. And when Bob shared this with me, my response was, you know, this is a tremendous blessing to me. And for one, God's showing me that he honored my prayers.
But hundreds more might be too much of a blessing. And Steve wants to find out how many he has. So he's going to talk to one of the doctors he sold sperm to.
I think there should be significant limits to how many children any individual donor can sire, if that is the word.
When you're talking maybe hundreds of people, that's not good.
I do feel there is something wrong about that number being somehow much higher than if it could be natural.
This mass production, it makes you feel a bit like you've come off the production line of a factory.
How many women could be impregnated by one man and conceive? How many? Thousands?
Sure.
Thousands.
Sure.
Yes, I can see the problem then, yes.
Hi. Hello.
Dr. Levine?
It's Candid Camera.
It is indeed. Barry Stevens.
You're rolling. You're not getting
How are you, Doctor?
Oh, sure.
Hello. That's and this is Steve Shelton.
Hi. Good to see you again. It's been a long time. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
We've come to see the doctor at one of the places Steve donated in Louisville. He's anxious to find out more about his hundreds of offspring.
He's my biological son who happened upon me about a year ago through DNA testing, made a connection. He's conceived through donor insemination. That's prompted me to begin to just ask some questions. What was actually achieved through my career as a sperm donor?
You know, all of this was done in a very anonymous fashion. All of the parties were advised that the donor would not know who the couple was and vice versa. You know, the couples wanted the peace of mind to know that one day somebody's not going to come up to them and say, and that's my kid and I want my kid back, kind of thing. So at that time, we only used medical students, and we didn't want them looking over their shoulder for somebody that perhaps then got divorced and wanted to sue the donor for child support or something like that. With donor insemination, some people don't want their child to know, with utter disregard to an agreement. You know, like, I give you permission to tell, it's just coming out, it's popping out of the woodwork.
Derek has talked about how important this connection is with his bio dad.
And ultimately, if he gets to know me, he'll get another dose of enrichment of his life. Meeting and dealing with people enriches your life.
You don't think there's anything special about the genetic connection?
I'm not a psychologist, okay? I would say that you would have to study it to see what you're saying intuitively sounds good. When put to the test, it may or may not. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm not fully agreeing with it either.
When a person becomes an adult, there are some pretty good reasons that maybe they should know their family medical history. And so from my perspective, I think people should be allowed to know at least kind of at that point.
So, Dr. Levine, that's the question I have. Are there any such records that might indicate anything about outcome from my donations in the past in terms of pregnancies or births?
The answer is no. We did our best for a long time to keep the records, kept records in a safe even. I'm trying to think if it was 07 November that we had a flood in this building, which took out 25–30% of the building, including this whole suite. We were out of the building for a while and lost some of that, okay? Some of it may actually still exist that we still have put away and yet to come out.
Sounds like one thing you would like to know from Dr. Levine would be the number.
That would be nice to know, yes.
That would take some doing. It would.
Any possibility that Steve could find out a bit more about and see if he wants to take the next step?
We would have to chat about that one day over a steak and some bourbon or something. Yeah.
Deal. Very good.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah,
you'll chat about it over steak and some bourbon.
Yeah.
Losing sperm donor records seems to happen a lot in this business. So I've come to Colorado to meet Wendy Kramer. I've known Wendy for a long time. She's one of the sperm bank's biggest critics.
So good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
we were out hiking.
Long before DNA testing, Wendy and her donor-conceived son, Ryan, started a website. It was called Donor Sibling Registry, DSR. Parents only know the anonymous donor by a number. On the DSR site, offspring can use that number to find other children from the donor with the same number. They're half-siblings. And thousands of donors also sign on to match their offspring. That's how Tim, the donor in LA, found his.
These numbers are updated every night.
This is how many people we've matched. So
17,000.
926. So we will hit 18,000 in February. And then 67,188 people on the DSR. So that's parents, donor-conceived people, children that parents have posted, and donors, egg donors and sperm donors.
Sometimes the donors find that the sperm banks have lied.
Can you imagine you're this guy and you go, you know, I think the right thing to do would be to make myself available to those 10 kids I was told I might have out there.
Yeah.
And you come to the DSR, and I know this because I hear from donors all the time who go, okay, just a minute. I just went on your website and it says I have 35 kids. That's impossible. I was promised 10. Yeah, well, right.
Of course, this can only happen in a closed, anonymous system, which Wendy hates as much as I do.
Donor-conceived people are all too often told, you should be happy to be alive. You should be just happy your parents wanted you so much. And it's like, well, sure, but I also am a human being. I have an innate desire to know where I come from and who I come from. So you can't deny that either, not with adopted people, but also not with donor-conceived people. California Cryobank has no idea how many half-siblings Ryan has because they have no accurate record keeping. It's preposterous. You can't promise limits when you don't have accurate records. It's impossible. You know, it costs money to have accurate record keeping. It costs money to update medical records and to share medical information. It costs money to have the accurate record keeping that it would take to limit the number of kids per donor. So it takes money to do all of that, and that they're a profit business. They're selling gametes.
At least in the UK and Australia, etc., there is some regulation. Do you think that Canada might progress to having some?
Yeah, but they get all their sperm from the US sperm bank. So what are they going to regulate? California Cryobank? I don't think so.
Well, they could demand that the sperm be identifiable.
Yeah, let them try. Sure. I just don't see it happening.
So you see the way forward is basically people using the DNA sites with the help of your website?
Absolutely. There's nothing else. Nobody else cares to step in and provide regulation or oversight. The sperm banks are big, they're powerful, they're wealthy. They have lobbyists in Washington. They keep any and all regulation from happening. Anytime there's a regulation that gets proposed, they put the kibosh on it immediately. It's the fox watching the hen house.
We can't change what's happened in the past, but now there is absolutely no excuse whatsoever for donors to insist on secrecy, and furthermore, there is no such thing as secrecy anymore.
Everyone has the right not to be deliberately deceived or deliberately deprived of information about essential aspects of their personal history.
The trouble is, straight couples often don't tell their kids. So David, a lawyer, is campaigning for us to have birth certificates with the sperm or egg donor's name as well as the parents. These accurate birth certificates would be available to offspring once they become adults. And in many countries, there's a growing movement from the donor-conceived to end anonymity. Back in 2004, I was here in Ottawa arguing the same, but the government refused. One of the MPs who persuaded the government to preserve donor anonymity was Dr. Hedy Fry.
Hi, Dr. Fry.
How are you?
I'm Barry Stevens.
It's very nice to meet you, Barry.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
I'm hoping I can answer your questions.
Right.
Our concern was that for many people who donated, they did not want people to know that they donated. They donated for whatever reasons, but they didn't necessarily want to have someone coming and saying, you are my father, or you are whatever.
When you decided to preserve the anonymity because some people might come and demand...
Not so much as to preserve anonymity, it is to protect the rights of the donor, just as you protect the rights of the child.
But the donor had a choice. We didn't have a choice, and we were the ones who resulted from that choice.
Yes, and of course the donor had a choice, and the donor could refuse to donate, in which case a lot of people would not have had access to donor sperm. And so I don't see how anyone can suggest that only one group in a discussion should have their rights observed and the other should have none.
The main reason was that you were afraid there would be no more donors. If we ended anonymity.
One of the major reasons, yes. It's because people were very reluctant to come and donate in the first place. And many of them only did so because they knew that their identity would be protected. We didn't want to dry up the number of donors.
But they don't dry up. When the UK ended anonymity, the number of donors actually went up. I would like to see a system where only donors who are willing to be identified to their offspring when the offspring get to be old enough should be recruited. And that has been shown to work. And if it does work, then why not do it in the future?
Well, then, if you think you would like to see amendments, you feel free, you're a Canadian citizen, to come up and ask or put out petitions, get a lot of people to sign on to that.
Well, I am asking.
And, well, no, but I will respond to people coming to me with a petition and saying, a lot of us want this to happen. One person is not enough.
And I think it would be a good idea, practically, for the government of Canada to get out ahead of this.
There is no problem with that. I don't have a problem with people coming to do that. And again, and then I will wait and see what that evidence says, and I will make my decisions based on that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Not at all.
Some progress. And I guess Dr. Fry is right. I have to come back again with thousands of us. In the meantime, I'm going back to London one last time. My new family loves a party, so I've got them together to hear what they have to say about all this.
It's like any family. You meet some people that you really connect with. The first person I met in England was David. But yeah, well, we met in a tea shop, and I can only say we landed up in Soho in a gay bar by the end of the evening. And I thought this guy's incredible. This is really fun. This is amazing. Then, as you get to know other people, you have
realise he's not.
I did not say that. I did not say that. Then you realise that you like some people, but then you like others. It's just like family, and that's the basic line. Yeah. The insane thing is there's 400 more of us out there.
It's actually more like 600 or more.
When the tests are all complete, we're going to turn out to be like one of those huge forest funguses that spreads hundreds of miles underground. You just see the odd, fruiting body that shoots up. We're the fruiting bodies. But there's this nice ceiling.
One of the things that really upset me, actually, is only very recently, like in the last 2 years, I went onto some of these donor-conceived sort of WhatsApp groups and the Facebook groups, and I was really shocked and upset to see these really young people talking about how they hadn't been told. People in their 20s, they hadn't been told. They're finding all these siblings, all these different things. Finding that the doctor was their dad. I mean, loads of them. I'm thinking, Jesus, I thought all this was just us because we were in this weird sort of initial phase where it was all new. Yeah. But it's actually still going on, and that makes me really upset. I think that's really... People should know better now. Like, maybe our parents didn't.
Exactly.
But people should know better now.
Better.
They should know better.
Anonymity, the end of anonymity, surely is going to cause pain for those people who choose or chose to do something that was deeply private and personal to them.
For me, the real point is that we all have a right to our own narrative. We all have a right to our own story. And that seems to me just to be incontrovertible. To be human is to have a story, and to have a story, one must have the true story. Just saying, these kids, they'd be better off not knowing. It's bullshit. And for someone else to come in and say, but for the convenience of others, we'll just delete that. It is not
The only
permissible.
argument for it, historically, surely, was simply that donors would not come forward if the understanding was that they might be approached.
Which is disproved by the facts. After the abolition of anonymity, the number of registered sperm donors went up.
Yes. And then you've got the industry that's making a load of money out of it, and it's often quite disgusting, actually.
So I'd like to ask, well, what's all this like for the nieces and nephews?
But I don't have any really uncles or aunts or anything like that. And for me, it is like, I know, it's exciting. It's great because I'm so young, but I've got a whole lifetime of people and family to be able to stay in contact with and to be able to meet if you're traveling across the globe and everything like that. We have
a lot of
WhatsApp
couches.
chat. Yeah, exactly. A lot of couches.
I'm totally with that. And I think, I met Becky first, Shirley, Carol, Elaine, and there is something. I meet a lot of people in the job I do, and with most people I get on, but there was something there was a connection. I can't
Familiarity.
describe it. It was like,
Familiarity.
in some ways, I'd known them all my life, and I cannot describe it, and I wouldn't like to say why. But I also felt meeting, forgive me, Barry in Canada. There was a sort of not immediate female connection, but there was a connection there with Barry that I felt relaxed. I spent the day with him. We had some quite good laughs, I think.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have had that with any other bloke that I just picked up off the street. Sorry.
You have a lot of experience with that,
It was a
David.
bit- and that was good. And so I don't know what it is, but there is a something.
There is definitely
There is a something.
There is a something.
Last question. This is really last. Who looks like who?
I look like you.
Those two.
You look like you. It's a tough one for you kids.
Both drunk.
They look like that.
Well, I reckon we should be sort of like get
While I was editing this film, several new siblings appeared on the DNA sites. Bertold Wiesner's descendants that we have identified now number 137, and there are plenty more to come. There's a bit of a paradox. It's great to be part of this clan, but I really hope that we are one of the last of the huge families produced by anonymous men, and that we can put an end to all the secrets and lies.